in solidarity for the Palestinian cause tonight. And to me, more importantly, to see a large number of people whom normally Muslims around the world wouldn't have expected to turn up to an event like that. And when I go back to Malaysia in a few days, I think the most important photo that I will bring back is the one that I took with a group of the rabbis just now. Because in our society, we've been told, and there is this big misconception, that everything that happens in Israel with the Palestinians is blamed on Judaism. And the fact is, there is a serious disconnect between the understanding from the Muslim perspectives around the world, from the Western perspective, from your society, from the Arab society. And this misunderstanding has been adroitly manipulated over the years to create the gulf that allow what happens in Israel, in Palestine, to continue until today. The best thing, I think, apart from all that have been said so far, I would like to concentrate and elaborate a bit more about the number one concerns of many governments in the world, mine included, is the issue of terrorism. We know that so long as the issue of Palestinian rights and justice is not addressed fairly, there can never be peace, not just in Middle East, but in other parts of the world as well. And over the last few months, my country, Malaysia, Indonesia, our neighbor, have seen a dramatic increase in the number of terrorism. Of course, the extent differs. You know, it's worse in Indonesia. It's getting worse. It's picking up in my country. And we all know that so long as the issue of Palestinian rights are not addressed, it will continue to be manipulated by wicked people to recruit impressionable young Muslims to vent out their anger about what's happening or what's not happening in Palestine. And to them, if I can't hit Israel, then fair enough, I'll just go to Iraq and Syria to do something about it. At least I'm doing something about it, even though I can't go and help the Palestinians. We know that's going to stay and it's going to get worse. And if we want to nip the problem in the bud, we really have to look at this urgently. And because of that, I think it's in the very best interest of the Western and British societies, British people, British public, and especially your government, to understand that the issue of Palestinian rights and justice is no longer about a faraway issue. The stake is yours, and it's here. Because unless you deal with it, and unless you deal with it globally and together, this is not going to stop. And what I'm most concerned with is that the Western and international community are risking your moral authority to talk about human rights, to talk about democracy, to talk about justice, so long as this double standard is perpetuated. Because the longer the problem of Israel continues, especially now when people feel that there's so much focus on what's happening in Syria and Iraq, not that we shouldn't focus on it, but the root cause of it has to be acknowledged as well, that it comes from the transgression and terrorism of the Israeli state. Unless this is addressed adequately and fairly, that double standard eventually, I think, will challenge the very foundation of the values that Western international communities preach around the world. The value of justice, the value of human rights, the value of democracy. Because people say, stop talking down to us. Look what you are doing. I mean, and it's not working. If you are like that, don't come to us and preach about how we should treat our own people, because we can see how you are dealing with your own citizens and other issues and so on. So I think, I don't want to repeat everything that you know. All of you here are here because you know, and you want to do something. What I'm most interested, and that's why we come all the way from the other end of the world, is that how do we want to move away from what we have been doing for the last 20, 30 years, because over and over again, the disconnect persists. The British public and your politicians, your MPs do a lot of work in support of Palestinians, but that is not represented fairly by your governments, successive governments, whether it's conservatives or Labour. At least from my perspective, at the other end of the world, it doesn't change much. So we've got to address how is it that we want to do things differently, and that's where I think there's a unique opportunity, as Baron Stong mentioned just now. Ironically, because of Brexit, British people, your government, your country now, suddenly becomes the center of the world until you decide what you're going to do after this. People want to know about what British is going to do because obviously it will have a lot of impact globally. And this is how I think there is a unique opportunity, because my country, Malaysia, for example, have a unique bilateral trade arrangement, especially with Britain. We are the 18th largest trading nation in the world. We have a seat in the UN Security Council. Actually, we are quite influential as far as our dealing with Britain, with the EU, with the Americans and the Chinese is concerned. I suffer the same problem that all of us here suffer, which is our position, and Malaysia is a Muslim country, is not adequately represented by our government. And that's why over the last 30 years, as much as Malaysians have helped a lot and have been good friends of the Palestinians, a lot of what we do largely revolve around humanitarian aid. You know, it's good, but there's a limit to how is that going to change anything. And I'm looking at the clock. Can I have about 2-3 more minutes left? I think after this 1 week visit, I think we can bring back at least to Malaysia and Indonesia and that part of the world. There are certain things that we can really concentrate, especially, and of utmost importance, is that I think it's high time that the MPs and civil societies take things directly and not leave it to our governments to represent our position. And in the case of Malaysia and Britain, there will be a lot of renegotiations, there will be a lot of relooking at arrangements because, well, Britain is no longer part of the EU. There will be a lot of discussions after this. I think it's high time that parliamentarians begin to put a condition that unless certain positions are reflected or is addressed publicly and adequately by the British government, of course we are not going to go forward with certain understanding that is asked for by the British government. Unless we see more commitment in certain areas, especially with regards to the Palestinians, and firmer positions against Israelis' transgressions, I mean, the British government cannot expect to come to us and say that, you know, we are good friends, can we get exactly the same deal that we used to have from the EU? I mean, these are the opportunities that hopefully we can leverage. And in societies like Malaysians and Indonesian societies, Palestinian issues are the single most sentimental issue. No politicians can survive if you stand against it. No politicians can win an election if you say that, hang on, let's support British government's position that is friendly to Israel. You just can't survive, not in our societies. And the other thing that, the final thing that I think we can work together after this, it is high time that we address this gulf of misunderstanding about what the British society and what the politicians feel about Palestinian issues from what is being represented by your government in my society. Because it's dangerous, because as far as the Muslims in the Far East is concerned, there is no difference between Graham and and David Cameron as far as your position on Israel is concerned. You know, I mean, they would have loved to hear what Baroness Tong talked about just now. I mean, you would have been an instant superstar in Malaysia. Unfortunately, they have never heard that, because the only thing we've heard over a long time is the British government's position that is very friendly to the Israeli government. And therefore, it is important to bring your views directly to the Malaysian societies, to Indonesian societies, because bridging that gap will ultimately lead to more understanding, and eventually, I hope, British society as a whole will understand it is in their best interest to have more MPs like you who can bridge the gap of misunderstanding between Muslims and non-Muslims, because that is the only way to nip the problem of terrorism in the bud. And hopefully, after this, you know, I'm going to work, hopefully, that our next meeting, hopefully either will be in Jakarta or Kuala Lumpur, having all of you, especially the rabbis, presented in the Muslim communities of the Far East so that they understand the problem of Palestinians is a global issue, and the solidarity is shared globally by people of multi-faith, multi-party, and backgrounds and race. Thank you very much. I hope to see you.
Thank you very much, Rafizi. I'm left a little bit concerned for Graham returning to Easington and trying to explain to his constituents that there's no difference between him and David Cameron. We've got about 15 minutes for questions, ladies and gentlemen. Any questions? Gentlemen there with the check shirt.
Know what the issues are. We've been through them over and over again. And I just briefly, to begin with, want to tell you what I am tired of. I'm tired, first of all, of having it implied that I'm being anti-Semitic when I criticise Israel. I'm not just tired, I'm utterly sick of it. Yes. Because I know in my heart of hearts that that is a ploy to shut us up. Yeah. And I know in my heart of hearts that I am not anti-Semitic, I have never been anti-Semitic, and I never will be anti-Semitic. What I am anti is injustice. Yeah. And that is what Israel dishes out every day, relentlessly, to the Palestinians. So don't be afraid of being accused. If you feel as I do, what I say to them is, look, if you want to test that, take me to court. Take me to court, and I will defend myself. That's one thing I'm tired of. The next thing I'm a little bit tired of is going to lots of meetings. We have lots and lots and lots of meetings. And I always think, oh, no, meeting. I was in the West Midlands at the weekend. A brilliant